This podcast is sponsored by Aleppo Restaurant on Wonderland Road North and Crossings Pub and Eatery on Hyde Park.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you may be listening. We welcome you back to another edition of the Vickers Crossing Podcast, coming to you again from Crossings Pub and Eatery on Hyde Park Road in London. And as always and still, I am Rob Henderson, the rector at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's Anglican Church in London.
Your sexy self. And I am Kevin George, rector, priest. I believe we're now called incumbents at St. Aidan's Church in the northwest corner of it. Yeah, no, we changed. We recently had a big synodical meeting, and we're now incumbents, not rectors.
Okay, good.
So it's incumbent upon me to remind you that I'm the incumbent at St. Aidan's, and you are the incumbent at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's.
And once again, I missed that meeting.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the way it goes.
We were podcasting when that happened.
Right. Well, we're glad we're back with you again, and got a good opportunity to chat and spend some time together. And as always, we want to make sure we say hello to our good friends here at Crossings who are hosting us again on Hyde Park Road, one of our great sponsors, and also Aleppo Restaurants on Wonderland Road in London.
Yeah, great food there. If you're looking for a good shish kebab, a little bit of sajuk, perhaps a tawuk, maybe a falafel, something like that, a fatouche, this is your place to go.
It would be incumbent upon you
to
go to Aleppo.
Well, it already is. Never trust a skinny chef. And what are you drinking?
I'm drinking, what am I drinking today? So yeah, we're at Crossings. We're enjoying an appropriate adult beverage once more, and I've got a delicious Sleeman draft from the taps to enjoy today. What do you got over there? You got a little something?
I got something a little special today.
Okay, let me
just
let's
have a
hear
listen.
That.
I've heard people say
I'm drinking a little
too much of anything.
Barry White
Wow,
from Sons of Kent.
that's impressive.
Kent County, baby.
Are you familiar with Barry White at all after or before you heard that song, Ian?
Not at all.
Not at all?
Well, so there's a red beer here now at Crossings called Barry White.
Barry White from Sons of Kent.
Yeah, and I must say it's quite good.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Well,
Way
if
to
you're
go,
not,
Sons of Kent.
too familiar with Barry White, ask your parents, Ian.
They'll be able
Because
to
there's
tell
probably
you.
a story about you're here for a reason, and it might have to do with Barry White.
Wow, okay.
Good.
Wow.
We'll talk about that. So how you doing?
I'm all right,
Good,
I'm officially done high school.
You are
This
officially
man
done
is
high
no longer
school.
a student in regular school
Well,
anymore.
congratulations.
Yeah.
You finally put an end to that.
Yeah.
Good.
Last
Good.
exam yesterday, what was it?
My last politics exam yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Excellent.
How'd we do?
it went all right. I don't
you
know.
feel good about it?
I felt fine. Like I didn't leave the exam going, "Oh, that sucked." No, it was all right. Yeah, I don't know.
Was there a tear shed when you walked out for the last time?
Not really. I don't know. It still hasn't hit me yet. Like I'm still I feel like I should go back to school for like band practice tomorrow morning or something like that. So I don't know. Yeah.
See, I was just saying once that now you'll just drive by that building for the rest of your life. And
That's
say,
right.
"Ah,
Wave and
yes,
smile."
I remember when I was a young lad.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
That is
good.
so
Well,
good that he's
congratulations.
done.
No, that's a
Next
big,
big thing for him is camp.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Wow.
Kimoki.
Camp Kimoki
Wow. Yeah.
this summer.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of a gallery here today too, eh?
We do. You want to?
Yeah,
You want
we
to
have the
shout out
fronts
to the
from
gallery?
A. Miller George are here.
Yeah.
A. Miller George Funeral Home, who we had as a gallery when we were doing our recordings at the Diocese of Huron Synod.
Right.
And they were quite entertained by us, so we're glad to have them here.
Hello, gallery.
How are you doing?
There they are.
We got a little business to do with them afterwards.
Okay.
We'll see where we can take them on this ride of ours.
Great. No, it's good to have them here. And also, I want to say hello to our special guest today, Pam Cullen. Hi, Pam.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Good. You're welcome. I'm glad that you could be here with us today. And Pam's going to be chatting a little bit about some things in our area and in the London community regarding the London Community Chaplaincy, for which you are a part of as chaplain and executive director as well.
That is
We're
true.
We're in a couple of hats.
2 hats.
Yeah, 2 hats. Okay, good. Well, we're glad you're here today. We're going to get into the meat of that in just a little bit. But first, we've got a couple of things we want to mention. Something coming up in July, Kevin,
Yeah,
that we want to
we've-
get people to get tickets for and come out and
Yeah,
see.
please, folks. We're very fortunate. I had the opportunity on behalf of this esteemed institution here, the Vickers Crossing, to take a ride up to Toronto about a month ago and sit with Michael Corrin, Many of you will know Michael as a TV personality and columnist with a number of papers in the Toronto area. At one time had a TV program on Sun News Media and also on 100 Huntley Street, and really lived on sort of the conservative end of things, and has made quite a journey of late, and has just actually finished at Trinity College his Master's in Divinity, and is now progressing towards ordination in the Anglican Church. And has now taken an affirming stand when it comes to LGBTQ rights and marriage, and is very much on the other end of many of the arguments that people often counted on him to espouse. And we're very fortunate to have him coming to town for a weekend. Mm-hmm. So we're going to record a podcast with Michael on the 20th of July, but he's also going to be speaking that evening at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's Church at Rob's Church at 7 p.m. on the Saturday night. And
right.
So we'd love to have folks come out. Tickets are $15 in advance. They're $20 at the door. You can get them if you visit our Facebook page. You'll see there's a link where you can buy them, or you can visit my church or Rob's church, and tickets are available to you. We'd love to have people out there.
Right, and he'll be sharing a little bit about his journey and some of his thoughts around following Jesus in today's world and such.
Yeah.
And there'll be an opportunity to chat with him after. We're having a reception after.
Book signing, reception.
Book signing, and yeah. And I just picked up his book. It's called Epiphany.
Epiphany, great book.
In which he kind of chronicles his change of heart and change in understanding of things through his journey. So interesting. I haven't got through it, but I'm going to do that before the 20th, and we'll talk to him on the podcast.
Bone up? You're boning up on this?
I'm boning up. I'm doing some research.
All right, good for you.
Good. So we hope people can come out to that.
Yeah, it's called Faith and Public Witness, Following in the Way of the Rebel Jesus.
Right.
Is his talk. So
yeah. Good. Well, we'll look forward to that. All right. We've got to get into taking care of Ian here, because there are some people that are just, they would be so disappointed if they didn't get a little bit of culture and understanding from producer Ian. So it's time once again, ladies and gentlemen, for one of our favorite parts of the Vicar's Crossing podcast, Ask Ian.
Ooh, wow.
Wow,
that
really
is
deep.
what those sounds are just
deep.
Barry White would be impressed.
Inspired by
Barry White. So, Ian, this question comes to you from another question from Byron. We get a lot of questions for you from the neighborhood of Byron here in London.
Shocker.
Yep. This one comes from young Robbie Stevenson.
Okay.
He was wanting to know, now that you've walked you past your last exam and you're now into the world of freedom away from school, what now would you say to the class who is coming in to grade 12 next fall? What advice would you give to them in this their last year of school?
That's a great question.
Yeah, well, Robbie only comes up with the best.
So I know a lot of, you're talking about like the grade 11 year going into grade 12, right?
The next graduates.
Yeah. So I don't know, like as you well know, I've been outside of school for such a long time now.
Yeah, well, at least a day.
Yeah.
At least a day.
24 hours.
So I'm full of wisdom when it comes to this topic.
You are full of something.
But it's appreciate the day-to-day sort of thing. Like the things that sort of I'm missing now, I think the most is like a casual Friday or like a casual Tuesday. Okay. And that's not to say like enjoy the big things too. Like I know the final concert for them is coming up, and I know that they'll have like their end of the year sort of trip. I'm talking about like music kids specifically, because I don't know what science kids do, but it's
they blow things up.
Essentially, yeah, they have all those chemicals. I think it's just appreciating that, like casual Wednesday, being like, this is like I'm here right now, and that's great. Like I'm chilling in whatever classroom and I'm doing whatever work, and just not aiming to regret things. I don't know. You should just appreciate where you're at. But you know, I'm full of wisdom, so
it's good wisdom, because it goes fast.
That's right.
You don't think it's going fast when you're in it. It's like, get me out of here. And
Yeah.
when it's over, you say, well, that was
So
quick.
you're 18 now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, one more thing. Sorry, just before you finish, like, also don't focus on next year, because it's gonna happen no matter what, and you'll figure it out on the way. Because everyone's worried about getting their marks and stuff. So just like chill, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know.
So you're 18 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take a good look at me right now.
Yeah.
This is what 30 years into the future looks like.
But don't don't worry about it, Ian.
And it'll be
Don't
here
worry
before
about
you
it.
know it.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
You know what? This is what the future looks like, okay?
That's right.
I had hair once too, and no body fat, just like you.
Wow.
Thank goodness we have no visuals today on the podcast.
Wow.
Well, that's good. No, that's good wisdom. That is
Yeah.
good wisdom. So hope it was a good ride, and
It was. It's wild.
yeah.
He's an extremely good young man, so I have no doubt you will have done well.
Right.
I'd hope so.
So let's bring Pam into this here. So Pam, we do this thing on the Vickers Crossing podcast we've been doing for a few weeks now called Trivial Priest,
Oh, yeah. That.
which suits us quite well. So Ian's going to explain a little bit, but we'll need your help to kind of get us off on the right foot here, okay?
Yeah.
This is my segment.
Yes.
I get to introduce this. This is my gift. So
Yeah.
these two priests are full of wisdom and knowledge as well.
And many other things.
But sometimes they have to be prodded to answer certain questions.
Poked.
So with the 40-year anniversary of Trivia Pursuit, we have established what is now called the... Oh, I'm going to screw this up. It is called the Canon Tavish
Yeah.
Trivia Cup.
Yeah.
Now, we use the cards from progressing years since Trivia Pursuit came out. So this year is 1984.
Wow.
1984.
There was a book about that?
There was a book, George.
was a
Did they
book.
make a movie about that too?
They did.
Yeah.
Anyway, so would our esteemed guest please give Rob a category?
I choose history.
All
History
right.
for me. I love my history.
And one for Kevin?
Oh, I can't choose the same one?
No, he's got to.
Oh.
He's got to do another one.
Both off the same card for.
Yeah.
All right. Science and nature.
All right.
Hey, love
Okay.
science
I like
and
to
nature.
blow things up.
History is orange or yellow? It's
Yellow.
one of those.
History's
Yellow.
Yellow. Okay,
Yellow.
cool.
Yeah.
So, Rob,
Yes, Ian.
what NASCAR great, nicknamed the King, drove the last victory lap of his career with a special guest in the stands, President Reagan?
Oh, okay. President Reagan. Hang
Well,
on.
I
a minute.
remember President Reagan.
Yeah. Well.
I just actually had a conversation with a guy like 4 or 5 days ago talking about sports and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's
How
a
do you
big
get a
This
NASCAR
sounds like
guy.
sports.
How
Doesn't
did
sound
you-
like
Yeah.
history.
What I
Like,
want to
I know,
know
that's
is
not a-
what I
that
want to
doesn't
know
seem like
is
history to me.
this always happens to him.
Yeah.
He managed in a history category to get a
Yeah.
sports
You
question.
get a sports question.
It's like-
But what I said when we were talking is I follow all sports, but I've never watched a race car race in my life.
Oh dear.
I know nothing about race car drivers or driving other than they go in a circle.
Well, this is good, and I might be able to
And
tell you.
So I really don't have an answer.
Okay,
Other than
well,
I'm going to guess. I'm going to
Wait,
guess.
Hold on. We got it. We got to
Oh,
we
yeah,
gotta
I
ask,
got to
we
ask.
gotta-
Okay.
Here we go.
so
Let's see what I get.
I
Okay.
think,
Kevin.
I think I know, but
I think I know.
Go.
What British
Can I have your
airline?
question? British
Kevin,
airline. Go ahead,
Here we go.
sorry.
Okay. What British airline, now known for its posh digs, charged only $189 for its maiden flight from the UK to New Jersey?
Okay.
All right.
all right.
So
All right.
let's start with Rob because his question was asked first. What do you think?
So I'm going to just take a guess, and I'm going to say Dale Earnhardt.
No.
Richard Petty.
Richard Petty is the answer. Dale Earnhardt died in a car crash in the 90s, I think. But,
Yeah, but so he was still racing in the 80s.
you know, this was his last race. This
Oh,
is
that
the
was his
question.
last race. Yeah. See?
All right.
What do I know?
Pay attention, man.
I don't watch racing.
Okay.
Well, now you got an opening. So 'cause
Okay,
the
I got an
score's
opening.
3-2 for me.
The only British airline I know is British Airways.
The answer is Virgin Atlantic.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. What the heck?
These
The gallery over here got it right. Dave got it.
Did you know that? No, either one. Nothing.
Trivia's not my thing.
No. Okay.
My husband would be great at trivia, though.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm gonna have to bone up on my
Well, yeah, you
race
better get.
car.
Yeah, yeah. So
Race
still
card
3-2 for Robbie.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3-2 for me. We'll try again next time. All right. Good. Well, Pam, we're gonna get into a little bit about you and some of the things you do, and want to chat a little bit about some of the work you do with the chaplaincy. So, so just as a bit of a brief introduction, I'm going to tell a little bit about you to our listeners. Okay.
Sounds good.
So, and there's one really interesting tidbit here.
There's a
that
lot of
we
interesting
have
tidbits
to-
there.
we
Come
have
on.
to get into a little bit, but so Pam has been the Executive Director and Chaplain at the London Community Chaplaincy for about 3.5 years now, and busy, of course, supporting residents with advocacy needs, developing new programs, overseeing the staff, fundraising, and some of her favorite things are the planning of the parties and the celebration and all around that, which is always good. And this past 2 weeks, she's piloted her first Iftar parties to celebrate Ramadan with the Muslim residents in the places that they live. So Pam's an ordained pastor with the Canadian Baptists of Ontario and Quebec, and has served as a community pastor in both Mississauga and London. And so this is the interesting thing. We got to delve into this a little bit, guys.
All right, let's hear it.
Pam once bought a house,
Yeah,
sold a house,
yeah,
moved,
yeah.
and had a baby all in the same weekend.
Oh, come on.
It's true.
Come on.
Yeah.
So how does one multitask that? Paint that
That is
picture
a
for us.
perfect picture of my day-to-day reality, and that captures my personality fully. So,
Okay.
a little insane. Our lawyer did say it's not good to close a house while you're having a baby. Tips from the
advice
legal
already.
profession. Yeah.
Brilliant.
From a lawyer.
Some things did
Brilliant
go wrong,
lawyer.
and I was not actually in the best of place to, help those things out. So.
Well, yeah, you don't get to pick all the time.
Now, what we did get to pick was the date of the baby's delivery. And
Oh.
so I was having this baby in Mississauga, and we had moved. My husband had moved in February for a new position, and I had stayed to finish my contract at the church. And so we were timing a move as well as timing a baby's arrival. So we picked the baby's arrival date in October. There's a whole story around that. And it was on May 4th, which is my dad's birthday, which is awesome. And then things unfolded, and then we weren't expecting to move, and then we were moving, and then I had a whole group of friends praying. I called it Pray Us Sold, because we were buying a house and selling a house at not an ideal market moment. And so it was a little stressful to both sell the condo and buy a house in London.
Wow.
And it just all worked out that in the
That's
last
a busy
15
weekend.
days,
That's
it
a
all
busy
had to come
weekend.
together. So
There may be some sort of a record in there.
there might be.
There might be.
Yeah.
You should look that up.
I should look it
And now, is this your first child?
That was my second child.
That was your second
Yeah.
child. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And
In the first one, she just sold a couple of cars and bought a
Yeah,
motorhome.
that's all. That's all.
She got a motorhome, sold 2 cars,
There you
and
go.
bought a
Second
boat.
one's easy.
The second
oh,
one's
come
easy.
on. We
That's
just
right.
had that baby in Mississauga, put her in a car, and drove her to
I'm
London.
going to remember that next time I'm complaining about some busy weekend where I have,
Yeah, right.
a funeral to do and a
Right.
prep for Sunday
Exactly.
and having to go to a family event. And I'll remember that for
Yeah.
sure. Good. Well, we're glad you're with us today. And as we mentioned, Pam works with the London Community Chaplaincy. So I thought just as a starter, Pam, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the chaplaincy is for those that might not be aware, and what your role is as chaplain, because I know there's 2 kind of parts to the chaplaincy. There's the Limberlost area and then South London as well. So can you just paint a picture
So
for
the
us of what it
London
is
Community
and what you do?
Chaplaincy started pretty organically from caring Londoners about 30 years ago, and it simultaneously almost happened in the Northwest and in the Southeast, where people were responding to residents' requests for greater support within social housing, and some of those residents were attending different faith communities and asked their parishes or congregations to think together, how could we support more fully families who are struggling with poverty? And then the chaplaincies were born, and so it was very organic, very grassroots. About 10 churches in the south east, yours being one of them, were part of the original 10, as well in the Northwest was a little bit more eclectic in terms of backgrounds. But then they opened up in partnership with the London Middlesex Housing Corporation, little community drop-in places where it was staffed with a chaplain for someone to be able to discuss needs and support people through different types of crises and basic needs and things like that. And then over the years, it's evolved. So the London Community Chaplaincy now is not the same as it was 30 years ago, and things take on a life of themselves. Sometimes some grants create new opportunities, and that creates new ideas and new energy, and it's sort of like a snowball effect, right? You start something and then it grows or it changes. And so as it is today, we run 2 different community centers, one at Limberlost and one in Southdale. And we are open every day. About 25 hours a week we're open for parents and adults for community support, social inclusion, basic needs, just kind of a sense of fun, skill development, things like that. Could be anything from help with a resume to a ride to the food bank to a cooking class. And then every day after school, we're open for the children and youth with different types of programs. So it could be a girls group, a sports night, a skating club, a literacy program, drop-in recreation, all kinds of things. So.
All right. So then your role as chaplain is...
So as a role as chaplain,
when
people
you're on-
always
you're
wonder,
on the
like, what's
ground,
the
right?
different?
You're actually there.
Yeah, we are. So what's unique about our agency is that we are, our byline is building community, serving community in the heart of the community. So our centers are right in the heart of social housing. Our neighbors live there permanently. London Middlesex Housing Corporation provides the unit, which is the, I guess the the contact point, the entry point for our relationships. And then we're there every day. So we're not so much viewed as an outside agency, but as one of the neighbors. And so we see folks for many, many years. Some kids we've known since birth through graduation. And so we're journeying with families through a lifetime of moments of joy, moments of pain, struggle, frustration, happiness, all kinds of things. So it is a unique vantage point, very similar to being a faith congregation. So we're an extension of that. We're a parish kind of ministry where we are building community within those communities. So the chaplaincy piece is multi-faith, and so we offer a pastoral care perspective, not a counseling perspective. So if someone's in crisis or if someone has a baby, the way you would in a church as a priest or a pastor or a rabbi, you would go and you would celebrate with the family or grieve with the family or support the family through different painful events and all kinds of things like that, as well as those life stages and changes.
Wow. Okay.
So we have a bit of a warmer feel. I feel like because we're right in the community, we have a different vibe to us.
Right.
There's much more family feel to the space and to the gathering point. It's a little less maybe sterile than a community center might feel if you were just a visitor.
Right,
The kids
yeah.
are very used to walking in and out. They run in and out all day long. Same thing with parents get to be very comfortable with us as a neighbor in their community.
Yeah, you're building relationships.
Building
over time. You're not
relationships
just
over long term.
parachuting in and
Not parachuting
doing
in.
an event.
And
then
we're there for the
leaving.
long term,
Yeah,
right? We know
yeah,
that life challenges are not quick fixes. They're not for any of us a quick
Right.
fix. And so we're journeying with them through years of challenges. Sometimes things just take a long time to resolve or for circumstances to change.
Wow. Sounds like you got lots on your plate.
Yeah.
There's lots to move around there. You're on the front lines of children and families living in poverty here in London. I'm wondering if you can help put the face on that. I mean, obviously, London, we have listeners across the world, really. It's incredible who listens to this where. But so the issues are not unique to London, but we do have some unique issues here in London. I'm just wondering if you can help us understand who these people are, where they come from, and what are the sort of daily challenges that you see in terms of those who are living in poverty here in the city.
Well, I think it's an evolving story, right? Because social housing is now very difficult to get into. And so we know we have huge wait lists to get into social housing. So there's a little bit more of a stable tenancy than there might have been 5 or 6 years ago for other circumstances, which we can talk about. But basically, 9 out of 10 families who move into social housing do so from a place of crisisness. They're usually moving in from a place of homelessness, whether it's a women's shelter or a homeless shelter. And so they're very diverse in their backgrounds and in their needs. And then folks can be there right at that point of crisis. So some families have urgent critical needs and lots of trauma that they're working through. And some families have stabilized and lived there 5, 10, 15, 20 years, are really raising their families in that environment. So I would say there's not one type of family that lives in social
Sure.
housing. They're very diverse,
see
right?
it.
So you'll have folks who are just arriving from crisis. You'll have refugee families who are reestablishing their lives here in Canada. You'll have the working poor with the cost of living going crazy in London. We have a lot of folks whose lives have stabilized. They're working full time, but really huge challenge to move on and to find and secure other housing of the same size for their families. You'll have folks who are struggling with mental health and addiction and still working through those challenges. So you have single moms, single dads. We have folks from all different faith backgrounds, from the Indigenous communities. So it is quite an eclectic group of people. So our programming reflects that to some extent.
Yeah, I was
there's
gonna
not
say it
one,
must be.
there's not one pathway for folks, because if you're the working poor, there's certain needs in your life that present. And if you are still struggling with addiction or significant mental health challenges, there are other needs in your life and the needs in the lives of your children.
Right.
And so we really, as a chaplaincy, I think that's a unique thing, that we don't have a cookie cutter approach to life or to caring for folks, that we really try and know our families, understand their current needs, and work with them wherever they're at and however best supports their own goals.
Right. I was just thinking as you were outlining the diversity, really, of who these folks are that you're serving, how very flexible and sort of creative you must have to be in your role to sort of find programming that fits all of those needs, because it's got to be very hard.
For sure, and also the kids are all different, right? And that doesn't even take into account personality and needs and interests, right? And that's just life stages. Then on top of that, you have all the diversity that just makes us humans.
Right. I've heard some of the statistics, and I don't put you on the spot to throw out numbers, but you were mentioning about waiting for social housing and waits. What kind of
it's very
frame
hard.
are
Right
we-
now, there's a vacancy rate. I think it's like 1 or 2% in London, so people just aren't moving. Sometimes folks do transition, whether they're evicted or their family size changes or their relationships change, new partnerships, things like that, so they move on. I think the most current stat, but don't quote me even though we're online, 1,500 people waiting in the urgent status list, and then another 3,000 on the homeless. Like there's two levels. There's the
that's
urgent,
amazing.
and then there's a
There's
homeless.
a homeless list besides?
Yeah, so it takes a long time for families to get into social housing today. There's not a lot of turnover. And I mean, that is because even at full market rent, the units are $400 or $500 cheaper than the average market rent for a 3-bedroom townhouse in London.
Right.
So it really creates a difficult challenge for folks whose lives have stabilized and might like to try and live in a different part of the city.
Question about the clientele that you have in the neighborhoods that you serve in here and in South.
South and North.
South and North. That's
Yep.
what I meant, here and in the South. Here
Yeah.
meaning
We're in the North.
We're in
yes.
the North.
Not that anybody in Kuala Lumpur who's listening to this knows that we're North London, but you laugh. But somebody in Kuala Lumpur is listening right now. Hello, Kuala Lumpur. Disabilities. Do you have? I know, like we were recently at a clericus where we learned about indwelling, which is coming to town and putting in housing, which will help serve a lot of the people with disabilities who are also living in poverty. And I just wonder, is that a part of your clientele as well?
It is a part of the clientele, but right now the chaplaincy focuses on 2 predominant sites. We do have some clients outside of these 2 sites, but predominantly Southdale and Limberlost, and so they're family-based complexes. So you need to have children living in the home, and so they're not for single adults. And often folks who are accessing Indwell would be a single adult.
Sure, yeah.
I believe that is their mandate, is to
Yes, it
care for
is,
folks
yeah.
who are single.
Yeah.
So it's a different type of environment.
Yeah.
So we do have lots of folks on ODSP who would have
Do,
different
yeah.
types of disabilities and working with that.
Interesting.
But parenting at the same time and raising
Well,
their
right.
families
So
well.
all the
and-
challenges that go along with
yeah,
that.
for sure.
Yeah.
Right. One of our main themes of our podcast, Pam, is we like to talk about and kind of highlight how faith intersects with the public square, and I thought, what better example than what you're doing? I mean, you're literally in it day to day, 24/7. But so maybe you could speak a bit to our listeners about your role as chaplain with the Chaplaincy Network, especially as we mentioned, because with such an eclectic group, while you come from a Christian tradition, there are many faiths and understandings that you're having to kind of work with. And how do you do that, trying to represent all those different backgrounds?
Well, I would say, like any true chaplaincy is always ecumenical and always multi-faith, because in the hospital system or the prison system, you'll always have chaplains from diverse backgrounds. And so the goal is to support whatever faith perspective presents. And so as a chaplaincy, we say what makes us a chaplaincy or how faith plays a part in that. There's 2 sides to that. One is that for the communities we serve, we say that faith, spirituality and faith is an important part of being human. And so we want to nurture and encourage that however it's expressed, because we know that faith brings a sense of hopefulness to many people. And so what brings you hope and encouragement, and how can that help you in this moment of struggle or distress? And so that's something we would encourage and dialogue over with different people from different traditions. And as well, there's a huge part of people's spirituality that we want to celebrate, and there's not a lot of places. I mean, lots of cultural diversity and cultural celebrations, but we really have a bit more freedom to celebrate those special faith moments as a community to help build a sense of understanding within our communities and within London. And it's just really fun to celebrate Ramadan and to celebrate Easter and to celebrate all kinds of different moments in people's lives that give them hope, whether it's a special faith holiday or a significant part of the calendar. And so that's unique. So that's for the residents, I'd say. From a parishioner perspective, or from people who support the chaplaincy, I say we are pastoral care driven. So people from a faith background understand that context of caring and reaching out in that way. Many people in the complexes and many people in our city have faith, but attending a religious service on the weekend is not something that fits into their life at the present moment. And so we have lots of dialoguing and opportunities to share and engage and talk and encourage along that line. But really, it's if your faith calls you to serve. And so that's a unifying piece for all of us across faith traditions. But my faith as a Christian calls me to serve and walk alongside those who are struggling. My faith calls me to walk alongside newcomers and strangers and welcome people into our context and support them in that journey, as do many different types of religions and faith backgrounds. And so that is a unifying thing. And it's quite beautiful. I had one of my favorite moments was a couple years ago. We had a staff member, a good friend, who was a Catholic, and I was the Protestant. And we had a resident who was a Muslim, and all three of us were swimming in the beach at Grand Bend together. And I'm like, this is a picture of a history of the world gone right.
There you go.
And it was just this one little moment that, even from my own personal faith perspective, was so encouraging to say, in this moment, those three branches of faith have not always gotten along well, and what a beautiful moment to be part of and just to live. And so for me, that's a huge blessing to experience those moments where you can find greater faith for yourself by dialoguing or engaging with those who are different and experiencing their faith differently.
Sure, that diversity is a gift, it's not a curse, right? So what I wonder is, do you come up against the other side of that? I mean, in your work, I know in our work, sometimes we come up against some ignorance, and sometimes, whenever we're called into something which celebrates that diversity, there's often voices that want to push back against that, and particularly some branches of the Christian world, when it comes to faith in the public square, they want to get a little more irate if we're spending time serving those that are not like ourselves. Too often, I think sometimes people in church land like to other people. And I just wonder, do you come up against any of that in your work? Do you come up against any sort of pushback, even from your own, church background or whatever, in terms of the work that you're doing?
Oh, well, it's a very interesting question. We're very clear in our approach. So when I'm engaging, and one of my jobs is to engage faith communities in the work of the chaplaincy. So I'm very clear, and we try and be very clear about who we are and how we do ministry. So we are not always explained, we're not a conversion-based ministry. We're not here to convert anybody to any one faith perspective. Right. We're not here to push one religious tradition over another, but to celebrate spirituality. And so I think by my very clear explanation, sometimes people quietly withdraw from the desire to be a part of what we're doing. It might not be their thing, right? So some different traditions are more focused on conversion. And so we tend to not experience too much division on that, because of those who choose to engage and choose to participate are really solidly committed to that vision. So that does help us. I mean, people are people, right? So even within the community, we have an opportunity, even with the residents, to flag different cultures and to share and to build bridges. And so all of us are people in learning and expressing anger or frustration and concern, and so we listen to people who are struggling on all kinds of levels with that, from within the community, from faith communities, and we dialogue and we try and encourage people to see the unity and the diversity. So
and then what I heard you say earlier too, and it's so important, is that your ministry, your work there is about walking alongside, as opposed to leading someone somewhere to a specific point. There's a big difference between the two.
There is. That's a very good way to put it.
Oftentimes those that worry about the other so much are worried about that other isn't to a place where they think they need them to be.
And we have
but that's not what you're doing.
No, and we have really great, I've been really, really blessed by, I say one of my big blessings is to get to experience the diversity of faith communities in London, and I get to go and say thank you and to share and to ask people to support, and it's a really huge blessing to see the responsiveness of faith communities who want to give and want to share and want to participate. So I would say most of my experience is the opposite, where people,
I'm glad to hear that.
you know, and even from across traditions, we have evangelical Christians and mainline Christians, and we have participation from the London Muslim Mosque, and we have some new developing relationships with some folks from the Jewish community, and all kinds of folks coming together to just care for each other, because all of our faith calls us to do that. So.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm recalling a conversation at our diocesan synod recently that one of my delegates had with another delegate there, and it turned into a conversation about the sort of work that you're doing in another community in our diocese, and talking about how, you know, this work is happening, kids are being fed, people are being looked after, but nobody's talking about Jesus, you know. And what are we doing? We're not talking about Jesus.
Oh, okay.
And my delegate's response, well, no, you're being Jesus.
Right.
Right?
So
Like
from a Christian perspective, you
Yeah.
can say, you know, preach, like it's St. Francis, right?
Yeah.
Preach the gospel at all times. If necessary, use
use words. Yeah,
Use
you're
words,
being
yeah.
Jesus.
So we're
you know,
being
you,
Jesus.
you just need to do what we've been asked to do. You know, you don't need to. But there still seems to be yet this sort of leftover flavor at times that we need to somehow.
Yeah.
I also think it's important. I think this is a growth moment for people as they're engaging in outreach work, is not to see folks who are struggling with poverty as the other, as
That's
someone
right.
needing your services,
Exactly,
but as
yeah.
friends and neighbors. And so as a friend and neighbor, I
Right.
need support from my friends and neighbors in those communities.
Absolutely.
And as a friend and neighbor, they need support from me in a different way. And so it's really not so much, you know, I'm here to serve you or to help you with your problems, but I'm here to live life together and,
To
you
be
know,
in communion with you.
to be in communion with. And so
yeah.
I try and be a very authentic leader, a very authentic
Yeah.
person. I hope it comes across. And I have great friends from within the community. And if
Sure.
I'm having a bad parenting day, I don't pretend to be the mother of the year. And I think that frees people
Sure it
to
does.
to be more free in their own sharing.
That's right.
Because all of us need each other. And so
Henry-
that's really, I think, core to the
Sure
message.
it is. Henry Nouwen said that we all have to find our own poverty, right? We have to identify what our poverty is, and that in the midst of that, it's not because somebody's material wealth or whatever else. We all live in some form of poverty. And what does it look like? We all need one another. We live in relationship with one another, and when we do that, we make the bonds of what it looks like to be a Christian community or a faith community beyond that real. We make it real by what we do and what we say. How
And
we live.
I actually love it because I think that, you know, from middle class and more wealthier backgrounds, people want to sanitize their life and sanitize their problems.
Yeah.
And they have a persona they have to
That's right.
project, and they don't want to admit to the struggles or the challenges. And I think that there's less of a barrier in that in our context because people don't have time. Their needs are more critical. They're more open, perhaps, about sharing. My own experiences in South America when I was in seminary, I remember I worked in an urban slum for 2 months. I lived there with some missionaries and just really immersed right in there, lived right there. That was
Yeah.
my home.
Wow.
And when I came back, I walked around for 2 hours in a suburb of Mississauga, and I didn't see one human being.
Right.
And my talk to my church that morning, when the next Sunday, was that, you know, we say their world is inhuman
Yeah.
because, you know, they're living basically in ramshackle houses.
Yeah,
And I
and
said, but, you know, I
garbage
didn't see
dumps
one
and-
human
yeah.
being for
That's
2
right.
hours.
That's right.
And my
You saw
experience of
concrete.
isolation and loneliness was so high in this wealth of North America.
Yes.
So I think the same is true even in London. There's a lot of community, a lot of fun, and I was on the CBC a little while ago, and I tried to portray social housing, the good side, about how, you know, your neighbors are close, the cultures are more diverse right beside you, and so yes, there's a lot of stressors that come with living so closely to others, but there's also a lot of joy, and you know, always see kids playing outside. You know, in my neighborhood, it's a little bit, you know, people are not out and about in the same way.
Sterile.
Yeah, and so I think that there's a lot of blessings to be found from that as well.
That's great. Good. There's a federal election coming up in the fall. In case people forgot about it.
It'll be here.
Yeah, we don't take 2 years to prepare for our elections here in Canada, folks.
I think they've been at it for
they've been
2
at
already.
it for 4. Yeah, that's right. But that's coming up, and we know poverty, social housing has been an issue in our community, and it is in other communities as well. For someone like yourself that's on the ground on all this, what message would you want to give or ask to those who are seeking to represent our communities in regard to, you know, support systems, funding, things that need to be in place in order to address some of the issues that you've brought up today?
Well, I think, maybe it's obvious, but to take a long-term view, right?
Yeah,
To say that the
yeah.
decisions we make today are going to affect us 20 or 30 years from now. And so there's critical, urgent problems, and they need long-term solutions. And so we need to be very wise in how we make those decisions. I'm a believer in the possible. I have a lot of tenacity. And so I'd like to say, like, how can we be creative and collaboratively solve problems? Glass half full person. And so what can we do? We have lots of things we can't do, but what can we do? And I think collaboration is key to that solution. I think honesty and vulnerability is key to that solution, that we like to pretend that we're doing a good job, and I'm not always sure that we are. We have to be willing to ask ourselves hard questions and say, is this thing that we're so invested in really producing the results we want it to?
Right.
And we like to massage the numbers and make it sound good and sanitize it, but we have to be willing to ask those hard questions and really get to the root of it and say, maybe we just say it didn't work. That wasn't the right idea, and be more honest about the outcomes we're hoping to achieve, and ask hard questions and be willing to own our own mistakes in thinking and pragmatic solutions, own the mistakes of them, and say there is a better way, there's another way, let's try something new. Also, I think literacy is pretty key, particularly for London, and so I'm waving a little flag for literacy. The United Way, I believe, will produce a report that says, or has produced a report, that 1 in 4, I believe the statistic is, children in Middlesex struggle with the EQOA standard,
really? Wow.
which is 25% of our kids, and then the numbers are much, much higher when you're starting to look geographically at different pockets of the city. And so I think we have to own that, and we have to say, how do we support literacy so that all of our children have equitable outcomes? Because in order to combat poverty, we do it globally. We say education is a cornerstone, and how do we support the education system for all children in this city equitably? And I think we need to invest strategically in schools that have significantly more needs, and we need to be willing to invest strategically to ensure equitable outcomes for everybody.
Right. I want to ask Ian, because once we asked you, I can't remember which podcast it was, we were asking you about your thoughts about what you'd ask someone running for election, and you were bringing up the climate and that kind of thing, because that was important to you and
The mosque,
and
yeah.
others. Yeah, that was at the mosque, right. Do you guys have your friends or in school talk about social housing, poverty situation in London? Is that an awareness issue for you guys at all, or?
I don't think it's as conversed, I want to say, like,
Right.
which is probably a bad thing. But I think just because of how you can't really have, housing with no planet. That's, the only other issue, right?
Right.
So I don't know. It's you have to pick your spots, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
I don't
was just
know.
wondering. Yeah, that's all good.
I don't know.
All good. So Pam, what did you want to jump in? No.
I just
Before
wanted to say, I think sometimes people in this city are unaware of the sort of things that are happening, and it strikes me as I listen to you, Pam, and about the breadth and the depth of what you're doing and what London Community Chaplaincy is doing in the north and south ends of the city. I think a lot of people are unaware of this stuff. I think people don't really know that these things are happening, and I'm just very grateful for you for taking time to share with us, and even going to lowbrow people like the CBC. One day they aspire to be like us.
But, they can dream.
but take that, Lupton.
You should have him on your podcast.
We might just do that,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
But I just think you getting the word out is really important, too, because I think, I like you, I find that most people are actually very affirming and positive of things that really are good and journey towards light and goodness and wholeness. And I believe the more that people know that these sorts of services are being offered in our city for those who need them, the better it is for us. Because I think sometimes a lot of people despair that nothing's being done, that there's nothing happening.
For sure, and I think that's a common. I think we have to tell the other side of that story and say there's a
Yeah.
lot being done. There's a lot of caring, compassionate people. The other thing that I just would like to say in response to that too is that people are often afraid of neighborhoods where there's perceived high poverty. I live in East London, east of Adelaide. Love it. One day I'd like to be Sean.
Yeah.
I think east of Adelaide is great. And I remember moving here and people telling me, you can't leave east of Adelaide. I'm like, why not?
It's where where the best breweries are.
Well, it's just strange, you know? And so I think the
just
same
saying.
is true with social housing. People have a perception of who lives there and what people are like, and that it's dangerous. And I've heard people say they don't want their kids to go to Laurier because of the high school. It's a bad
Right.
neighborhood. When you're in the neighborhood every day, things happen for sure, but they happen on my street. They happen on your street. They happen everywhere. And there's so many great people who live there, wonderful neighbors and children and youth. And so I think we have to lose some of that fearfulness of people in communities that we don't know well.
Well, it becomes too easy to ghettoize the whole thing.
Right.
And that's not in keeping with what
And
we
you'd be
as North-
surprised, right? You'd be surprised who is, who lives in social housing
That's
today.
right.
And also, I think, another flag to wave is that, we need to be really conscious. People always want to combat poverty and do big things. And I like to say, be kind to your frontline servers. Be kind
right.
to your
Yeah.
Tim Hortons
That's
workers
right.
and to your McDonald's workers
Oh,
and
yeah.
to people who are
Yeah.
doing minimum wage jobs
Yeah,
because
the
they're
working poor.
And
they are the
sometimes
wor-
2 or 3 of them too.
Right,
Yeah.
2 or 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet, trying to raise their kids, and there's a lot of challenges for the working poor in our city. And I think the first step is being a polite and caring human being
right.
whenever we're in all
Yeah.
our contexts.
Yeah.
But I think be more gracious and more kind and more aware of the folks who are serving your coffee, delivering your pizza, cutting your lawn, or all kinds of entry level jobs that many people do to make ends meet.
No, that's
Fair,
a great
yeah.
point. Yeah, great point. Well, I'm so glad you could come and give voice to this. And I hope our listeners that are tuning in will be able to add their voices as well in some way, shape, or form and be more aware. And that's a big help. And how can people find out a little bit more about the London Chaplaincy? Maybe
Well,
how
we'd
they
love to.
can
We
either
have
get
lots of need
involved or
for.
help.
Yeah, we'd
or-
love to
yeah.
have you come and be part of it and to volunteer in some way. You can check us out on Facebook. You can check us out on the website, which is www.londoncommunitychaplaincy.com. It's a great website. There is a link that says contact us, and if you send me a message, I will get back to you. We do have a Facebook page, which is London Community Chaplaincy. So you're welcome to friend us, and we post things periodically there. That is our site for folks who don't live in our complexes.
Okay.
So we post good news stories, we post special events and fun celebrations,
Yeah.
and all kinds of
great.
meaningful moments there too.
No, you got a great newsletter. We're fortunate to get it. One of our
Yeah.
parishioners is on the board with Pam, so we're able to
Wonderful.
connect that way too. So yeah, those are good opportunities to find out more as well. So that's good. Thank you so much.
And I like to say
That's
thank you.
great.
It takes a lot of funders to do the
Yeah.
work we do. We're very grassroots.
Yeah.
We are very lean as an agency, and we are very grateful for everyone who supports us from across faith traditions. I can't start listing people because I will forget people,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
we have a large list of supporters, and they all do what they can, and we're really grateful for all the support that we receive from so many folks in this city. So.
Good, good. Well, that's great. Thanks, Pam, for coming in and sharing this with everybody. That's good. All right, so we're going to wrap up another edition of Vickers Crossing. Until
Wrap
we
her
get
up,
together,
baby.
We're going to wrap her up. Where can they find us, Kevin?
Well, if you're listening to us, you've probably found us.
They have.
But for the sake of it, you can share us with your friends through iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Buzzsprout. Anywhere that you'd like to listen to your podcasts, we're generally there. So
Or
we'd
just
love
go to Ian's house and they can sit
go
on
to
the
Ian's
laptop
house,
and
sit in his
listen together.
bedroom if you can
Yeah.
find a place to sit, and you can listen to him as he edits.
That's great. All right, so let's wrap it up and say thanks again to our great sponsors here at Crossings who give us the upper room to get together to do this on Hyde Park Road in London and Aleppo Restaurant. Say hi to the gang out there listening in all the time. And Ian, until we get together again, take care. Be good. And Kevin, we'll see you again.
I will see you again.
Thanks to the gallery in the back.
Yes, many
And to
thanks,
Pam
A. Miller
for coming in.
George.
And remember, Kevin, to always look both ways.
Before you cross the street.
Thank you for listening. Our hosts are Kevin George and Rob Henderson. Our producer and composers, myself, Ian, with original artwork done by Catherine Olenek. If you have any other questions and want to know where to find us, tweet us at Vickers Crossing, or find us on Facebook at The Vickers Crossing. If you have any other questions about anything heard on this podcast, leave us a comment or look in the description to find out more. Thanks!